The woman standing in front of Vincent Harlow looked like she had been through hell twice and was planning a third trip. Her dress was patched at the elbows and knees, her boots worn down to almost nothing, and her eyes held the kind of exhaustion that came from too many nights wondering if tomorrow would bring food or just more hunger. Vincent had seen that look before, in mirrors and on the faces of men who had lost everything they had ever worked for. But despite the weariness etched into her face, there was something else there too, a stubborn set to her jaw that told him she was not the giving-up type. "I can cook for 50 men if I have to," Harper Thompson said, meeting his gaze without flinching. "I have done it before, back when my father ran a boarding house in Silver City, New Mexico. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Bread, biscuits, stews, roasts. I know how to make a little stretch a long way, and I know how to keep food from spoiling in this heat." Vincent leaned against the fence post, studying her. It was 1878, and finding a decent cook for a cattle crew was harder than finding water in the desert during August. Most women would not take the job, not wanting to be the only female among 20 rough cowboys who spent their days wrestling steers and their nights playing cards and drinking whiskey. The few who would take it usually lasted a week before they either quit or caused so much trouble that Vincent had to let them go. But Harper Thompson did not look like the type to cause trouble, and she definitely did not look like the type to quit. "The pay is $30 a month plus room and board," Vincent said, watching her reaction carefully. "The room is a small cabin near the main house. It has a bed, a stove, and a door that locks from the inside. The board is whatever you cook for yourself along with the crew. The work starts before sunrise and ends after sunset. The men can be rough around the edges, but they know better than to disrespect a woman. I make sure of that." Harper's eyes widened slightly at the mention of $30. That was more than she had expected, more than she had made in 3 months working at the hotel in town doing laundry and scrubbing floors. It was enough to start saving again, enough to maybe rebuild what her family had lost when her father died and the creditors came calling. "When do I start?" she asked. "Tomorrow morning, 5 o'clock. We have got 20 men heading out at first light to move the herd to summer pasture. They will need a hot breakfast before they go." Harper nodded. "I will be there." Vincent straightened up, surprised at how quickly she had agreed. Most people wanted to negotiate, to ask more questions, to make sure they knew exactly what they were getting into before they committed. But Harper Thompson just nodded once and stuck out her hand like a man would, waiting for him to shake it and seal the deal. He took her hand, noting the calluses on her palm and the strength in her grip. She was used to hard work, that much was clear. "Vincent Harlow," he said. "The crew calls me boss or Mr. Harlow. You can call me whatever you are comfortable with." "Harper Thompson." "The crew can call me Miss Thompson, and you can too." A small smile tugged at the corner of Vincent's mouth. He liked her already, liked the way she did not simper or try to flirt or act helpless. She was here to work, same as anyone else, and she expected to be treated with respect. That was something he could appreciate. "All right then, Miss Thompson. I will have one of the boys show you to the cabin this afternoon so you can get settled. The kitchen is in the main house, and you will have it to yourself. There is a pantry stocked with basics, but if you need anything else, you make a list and give it to me. We make supply runs into Nogales every 2 weeks. "Nogales, Arizona?" Harper asked, just to be sure. "That's right, about 5 miles south of here." Harper nodded again, then turned and walked away without another word. Vincent watched her go, noting the straight line of her back and the determined set of her shoulders. She walked like someone who had learned not to show weakness, not to let the world see when she was hurting or scared or uncertain. He understood that. He had learned the same lesson a long time ago. Later that afternoon, One of the ranch hands, a young man named Tommy, showed Harper to the cabin that would be hers. It was small but clean, with whitewashed walls and a window that looked out over the rolling hills. The bed was a simple wooden frame with a corn husk mattress, but it looked like heaven compared to the narrow cot she had been sleeping on in the boarding house in town. There was a table with 2 chairs, a small stove for heat, and a trunk at the foot of the bed for her belongings. It was not much, but it was more than she had expected, more than she had dared to hope for. "The main house is just up that path," Tommy said, pointing. "Boss said to tell you the kitchen door is always unlocked. He also said if any of the men give you trouble, you come straight to him. He does not tolerate that kind of behavior." "Thank you," Harper said. "I appreciate you showing me around." Tommy tipped his hat and left, and Harper was alone with her thoughts for the first time in days. She sat down on the edge of the bed, letting the weight of everything catch up with her. It had been 6 months since her father died, 6 months since she lost the only home she had ever known. She had been scraping by ever since, taking any work she could find, sleeping wherever someone would let her lay her head. But this was a real job with real pay and a roof over her head that did not leak when it rained. This was a chance to start over, to build something for herself again. She unpacked her few belongings, hanging her 2 spare dresses on pegs by the door and placing her father's Bible on the small table beside the bed. Then she walked up to the main house to get a look at the kitchen, where she would be spending most of her time. The house was bigger than she had expected. A sprawling ranch-style building with a wide front porch and windows that let in plenty of light. The kitchen was in the back, a large room with a massive cast-iron stove, a long wooden table for preparing food, and shelves lined with pots, pans, and dishes. The pantry was stocked with flour, sugar, salt, dried beans, rice, coffee, and a dozen other staples. There were also strings of dried peppers hanging from the ceiling, sacks of potatoes and onions in the corner, and a barrel of salted pork by the door. Harper ran her hand along the edge of the table, her mind already planning tomorrow's breakfast. Biscuits, gravy, fried potatoes, bacon, eggs if there were chickens. She walked outside and found a chicken coop behind the house with at least 30 birds scratching in the dirt. Good. Fresh eggs every morning. She was standing there, watching the chickens and mentally organizing her supplies when Vincent came around the corner of the house. He stopped when he saw her, surprised to find her already settling in. "Getting the lay of the land?" he asked. "Something like that. I wanted to see what I had to work with before tomorrow morning. Are there any particular dishes the men prefer, or any foods I should avoid?" Vincent thought about it. "They are not picky. Most of them grew up on farms or ranches where they ate whatever was put in front of them. But they appreciate good bread and strong coffee. Anything beyond that is a bonus." "Understood." They stood there for a moment in comfortable silence, watching the sun begin its descent toward the horizon. The sky was turning pink and orange, and the air was starting to cool after the heat of the day. It was peaceful here, Harper thought. Quiet in a way that the town never was, with its constant noise and crowds and chaos. "How long have you been running this operation?" Harper asked, curious despite herself. "About 10 years. Started with nothing but a dream and a stubborn refusal to give up. Built it up 1 cow at a time, 1 acre at a time." Harper glanced at him, seeing him in a new light. She had assumed he was just the foreman, the man hired to manage the crew and keep things running smoothly. But the way he talked about the place, the pride in his voice, suggested something more. "You own this ranch?" she asked. Vincent turned to look at her, a slight smile playing at his lips. "I do. Every acre as far as you can see, and then some. About 15,000 acres in total, running close to 5,000 head of cattle. Harper's eyes widened. 15,000 acres. That made him one of the largest landowners in southern Arizona, one of the most successful ranchers in the territory. And she had just agreed to cook for his crew without having any idea who he really was. "I did not realize," she said softly. "When you said you needed a cook, I thought you were just the foreman or the trail boss." "Would it have changed your answer if you had known?" Harper thought about it, then shook her head. "No, I need the work and you need a cook. The size of your ranch does not change that." Vincent nodded, pleased with her answer. "Good, because I did not tell you to impress you or make you feel differently about the job. I told you because I want you to understand that this is not some fly-by-night operation that might fold in a month. This ranch is established, successful, and it is going to be here for a long time. If you do good work, you will have a place here for as long as you want it." Harper felt something loosen in her chest, something that had been tight and anxious for months. Job security. That was what he was offering her. Not just work for a few weeks or months, but real, lasting employment. It was more than she had dared to hope for. "Thank you," she said, and meant it. Vincent tipped his hat to her and walked away, leaving Harper alone with the chickens and the sunset, and a feeling of cautious optimism that maybe, just maybe, her luck was finally starting to turn around. The next morning came early, just as Vincent had warned. Harper woke before dawn, dressed quickly in the dim light, and made her way to the main house. The kitchen was dark and cold, but she had expected that. She lit the lamps, got a fire going in the stove, and set to work. By the time the sun began to lighten the eastern sky, she had biscuits in the oven, bacon sizzling in a pan, a pot of gravy bubbling on the stove, and coffee brewing strong enough to wake the dead. The men started filtering in just after 5, drawn by the smell of food and the promise of hot coffee. They were a rough-looking bunch, dressed in worn jeans and dusty boots, with faces weathered by sun and wind. But they were polite, each one nodding to her and murmuring a respectful morning, "Miss Thompson," before taking a seat at the long table in the dining room. Vincent came in last, and Harper noticed the way the men straightened up when he entered, the way they waited for him to sit before they started eating. She brought out platters of biscuits and bacon, bowls of gravy and fried potatoes, and pot after pot of coffee. The men ate like they had not seen food in a week, piling their plates high and going back for seconds and thirds. But they were careful not to make a mess, and when they were finished, they thanked her sincerely before heading out to start their day's work. Vincent lingered after the others had gone, finishing his coffee while Harper started clearing the table. "That was the best breakfast this crew has had in 6 months," he said. "Maybe longer." Harper felt a flush of pride. "I am glad they enjoyed it. They more than enjoyed it. You are going to spoil them, and then they are never going to let you leave." She smiled at that, a genuine smile that lit up her whole face. Vincent found himself staring, struck by how different she looked when she was not guarding herself so carefully. She was pretty, he realized. Not in the delicate, porcelain doll way that some women were, but in a strong, capable way that suited her much better. "I should let you get to work," he said, standing up. "I will be back for lunch around noon." Harper nodded and watched him go, then turned her attention to the mountain of dishes that needed washing. It was going to be a long day, but she did not mind. This was honest work, and she was good at it. That was enough. The days fell into a rhythm after that. Harper rose before dawn, cooked breakfast for the crew, cleaned up, and then started preparing lunch. After lunch came more cleaning, and then she would start on dinner. In between, she baked bread, churned butter, tended the vegetable garden behind the house, gathered eggs from the chickens, and made lists of supplies that were running low. It was exhausting work, but it was satisfying in a way that her previous jobs had never been. She was feeding people, keeping them healthy and strong, and they appreciated what she did. The men treated her with respect, just as Vincent had promised. They were careful with their language around her, always polite, always grateful. A few of them even started bringing her little gifts: a handful of wildflowers, a smooth stone from the creek, a carved wooden spoon that one of the older cowboys had made in his spare time. She accepted each offering graciously, understanding that this was their way of showing appreciation and respect. Vincent, she noticed, was around the ranch more than she had expected. She had assumed that a man who owned 15,000 acres would spend most of his time in town, conducting business and managing finances. But Vincent was a hands-on owner, working alongside his men, fixing fences, breaking horses, moving cattle. He came in for every meal covered in dust and sweat, and he always made a point of complimenting her cooking and asking if she needed anything. They started talking, little conversations that happened while she served him coffee or packed him a lunch to take out to the range. She learned that he was 28 years old, originally from Texas, and that he had come to Arizona with nothing but a horse and a saddle 10 years ago. He had worked for other ranchers first, saving every penny, learning the business from the ground up. When he finally had enough money, he bought a small piece of land and started building his herd. Year by year, he expanded, buying up neighboring properties, increasing his herd, hiring more men. Now, he was one of the most successful ranchers in the territory, but he still worked as hard as he had when he was a penniless cowboy just starting out. Harper, in turn, told him about her childhood in Silver City, about helping her mother run the boarding house while her father worked in the mines. She told him about losing her mother to fever when she was 15, about taking over the cooking and cleaning while still trying to finish school. She told him about her father's death 6 months ago, about how the boarding house had been mortgaged to pay for medical bills, and how she had lost everything when the bank came calling. "I am sorry," Vincent said quietly when she finished. "That is a heavy load to carry." "It is what it is," Harper said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I cannot change the past, so I might as well focus on the future." Vincent looked at her with something like admiration. "That is a good way to look at it. A lot of people get stuck in the past, dwelling on what they lost instead of working toward what they can build. But not you, you just keep moving forward." Harper shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. "What else is there to do? Give up, quit, decide it is not worth the effort." "But you do not do that. You keep going, no matter what." She met his eyes, seeing genuine respect there and something else that made her heart beat a little faster. She looked away quickly, focusing on the pot she was scrubbing. It was too soon to be thinking thoughts like that, too soon to be feeling things that went beyond simple friendship. She had only been working here for a few weeks. She needed to focus on her job, on building her savings, on creating a stable life for herself. Romance was not part of the plan. But over the following weeks, Harper found it increasingly difficult to ignore the way her heart lifted whenever Vincent walked into the kitchen. She found herself listening for his footsteps, looking forward to their conversations, noticing little things about him. The way he always took his hat off when he came inside, the way he treated his men with respect but also held them accountable, the way his eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled, the way he never asked her to do anything beyond her job, never made her feel like she owed him anything more than good cooking and hard work. She tried to push the feelings away, but they persisted, growing stronger with each passing day. And she was not the only one feeling something. She noticed the way Vincent started finding excuses to come to the kitchen more often. The way he lingered over his coffee in the mornings. The way he looked at her when he thought she was not paying attention. One evening in late July, after the crew had finished dinner and dispersed to the bunkhouse or into town, Vincent stayed behind to help Harper clean up. It was not the first time he had done this, but tonight felt different somehow. The air between them felt charged, heavy with unspoken words and barely acknowledged feelings. "You do not have to help," Harper said, drying a plate and setting it on the shelf. "I can manage. I know you can, but I want to." They worked in silence for a few minutes, the only sounds the clink of dishes and the splash of water. Harper was acutely aware of how close Vincent was standing, of the way their hands brushed occasionally when they both reached for the same dish. "Harper," Vincent said suddenly, his voice low and serious. "Can I ask you something? Of course." He was quiet for a long moment, as if trying to figure out how to phrase what he wanted to say. "Do you plan on staying here, I mean long term? Or is this just temporary until you find something better?" Harper turned to look at him, surprised by the question. "I had not thought about it like that. I suppose I have just been taking it one day at a time. But if you are asking if I am happy here, then yes. I am happier than I have been in a long time." "Good. That is good." Vincent set down the dish he had been holding and turned to face her fully. "Because I have gotten used to having you around, and I would hate to lose you." There was something in his voice, something that went beyond professional appreciation for a good employee. Harper felt her breath catch in her throat, felt her heart start to race. "Vincent," she said softly, not sure what she was trying to say. He took a step closer and then another, until he was standing right in front of her. "I know this might not be appropriate, and if I am out of line, you just tell me and I will back off. But I have to say this. You are the most remarkable woman I have ever met. You are strong and capable and kind, and you do not give up no matter what life throws at you. And I find myself thinking about you more and more, wondering if maybe you might feel the same way I do." Harper stared up at him, her mind racing. This was her employer, the man who paid her wages and provided her with a place to live. Getting involved with him could complicate everything, could put her job at risk, could leave her vulnerable in ways she had sworn never to be vulnerable again. But when she looked into his eyes, she did not see someone who would take advantage of her or use his position to manipulate her. She saw someone who was being honest and open, someone who was offering his heart with no strings attached, someone who would respect her answer no matter what it was. "I feel the same way," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I have been trying not to because it seemed like a bad idea to fall for my employer, but I cannot help it. You are everything I never knew I wanted, and it scares me how much I care about you already." Vincent's face broke into a wide smile, and he reached up to cup her face gently in his hands. "You do not have to be scared. I would never do anything to hurt you or put you in a position where you felt like you had to choose between your heart and your security. If you want to keep this separate from work, we can do that. If you want to take things slow, we will take things slow. Whatever you need, Harper. I just want a chance to see where this goes." She nodded, blinking back sudden tears. "I want that too." He leaned down slowly, giving her plenty of time to pull away if she wanted to, but she did not want to. When his lips met hers, it was soft and gentle and perfect. Harper felt something inside her unfurl, something that had been locked away for so long she had almost forgotten it was there. Hope. Joy, the possibility of happiness. They pulled apart after a moment, both of them smiling like fools. Vincent rested his forehead against hers, his hand still cradling her face. "I have wanted to do that for weeks," he admitted. "Me too." They finished cleaning up the kitchen together, but now there was a lightness to the work, a sense of possibility that had not been there before. When they were done, Vincent walked Harper back to her cabin, holding her hand the whole way. At her door, he kissed her again, a little longer this time, a little deeper. "Good night, Harper," he said softly. "Good night, Vincent." She watched him walk away, then went inside and sat on her bed, touching her lips and smiling in the darkness. Everything had just changed, and she could not wait to see what happened next. Over the following weeks, Harper and Vincent's relationship deepened. They were careful to keep things professional in front of the crew, not wanting to cause gossip or make anyone uncomfortable. But in private, they spent every moment they could together. Vincent would come to her cabin after the day's work was done, and they would sit on her small porch and talk for hours. He told her stories about his childhood in Texas, about learning to ride before he could walk, about the father who taught him the value of hard work, and the mother who taught him to treat everyone with respect. Harper told him about her dreams, about wanting to own her own restaurant someday, about the recipes her mother had taught her that she had written down in a small leather-bound book she kept safe. Vincent listened to everything she said with genuine interest, asking questions and encouraging her to keep dreaming. "Why not open a restaurant in Nogales?" he suggested one evening. "The town is growing, and there is nothing like what you are describing. You could serve all those dishes you have told me about, the ones your mother taught you." "It would take money," Harper said practically. "A building, equipment, supplies, staff. I have only been saving for a few months. It would take years to save enough." "I could help," Vincent offered immediately, but Harper shook her head firmly. "No, I appreciate the offer, truly I do, but I need to do this on my own. I need to know that I built it with my own hands, my own money, my own sweat and tears. Does that make sense?" Vincent nodded, understanding even though he wished he could just give her everything she wanted. "It does, and I respect that, but if you ever change your mind, the offer stands. Thank you." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the stars come out one by one in the vast desert sky. Harper leaned her head against Vincent's shoulder, feeling safe and content in a way she had never felt before. This was what love felt like, she realized. Not the dramatic, sweep you off your feet kind of love she had read about in novels, but the quiet, steady kind of love that grew from mutual respect and genuine affection. The kind of love that lasted. By September, everyone on the ranch knew that Harper and Vincent were courting, though the couple had never officially announced it. It was impossible to hide the way Vincent looked at her, or the way Harper blushed whenever he was near. The crew teased Vincent good-naturedly about being smitten, but they all approved. Harper had won them over with her cooking and her kindness, and they thought their boss deserved someone who made him smile the way she did. One afternoon in late September, a group of men rode onto the ranch property unannounced. Vincent was out checking fence lines when they arrived, so it was Tommy who greeted them and asked their business. They claimed to be representatives of a cattle company out of Texas, looking to buy ranches in Arizona. They wanted to speak to the owner. "I will send someone to fetch him," Tommy said, but something about these men made him uneasy. They were too slick, too polished, not like real cattlemen at all. Harper was in the kitchen when Tommy came to tell her about the visitors. She wiped her hands on her apron and went out to the front porch, curious despite herself. The men were standing in the yard, looking around with expressions that made Harper's skin crawl. They were appraising everything, calculating value with cold, greedy eyes. "Miss Thompson," one of them said, tipping his hat in a way that somehow felt mocking. "I am Richard Saunders, and these are my associates. We are here to speak to the ranch owner about a business proposition." "He will be back shortly," Harper said coolly. "You are welcome to wait in the shade of the porch." They did not wait in the shade. Instead, they wandered around the property, poking into buildings, examining equipment, counting cattle in the near pasture. Harper watched them with growing unease. wishing Vincent would hurry back. When Vincent finally rode up an hour later, his face went hard the moment he saw the strangers on his property. He dismounted and strode over to where they were standing by the barn, and Harper could see the tension in every line of his body. "Can I help you, gentlemen?" Vincent said, his voice clipped and cold. Saunders stepped forward with an oily smile. "Vincent Harlow, I presume? I am Richard Saunders. We represent a cattle consortium based in Texas, and we are interested in purchasing your ranch." "Not interested," Vincent said immediately. "This ranch is not for sale." "Now, do not be hasty," Saunders said smoothly. "We are prepared to make a very generous offer, more than generous, really. Enough that you could retire comfortably and never have to work another day in your life." "I said not interested. This ranch is my life's work, and it is not going anywhere. Now, if you will excuse me, I have work to do." Vincent turned to walk away, but Saunders called after him. "You might want to reconsider, Harlow. The cattle business is changing. Small operations like yours are not going to survive much longer. Better to sell now while you can still get a good price." Vincent stopped and turned back slowly. "There is nothing small about my operation. I run 5,000 head on 15,000 acres, and I do it with 20 of the best cowboys in the territory. I am profitable, successful, and I have no interest in selling to carpetbaggers who do not know the first thing about ranching. Now get off my property before I have you removed." Saunders's smile vanished, replaced by something ugly. "You are making a mistake, Harlow, a big one. The only mistake would be selling to men like you. Now leave." The men left, but Harper could see that Vincent was shaken. She waited until they were out of sight, then went to him. "Who were they really?" she asked quietly. Vincent sighed, rubbing his hand over his face. "Trouble. They are not really representing a cattle consortium. They are land speculators, the kind who buy up ranches cheap and then sell them to the railroad or mining companies for 10 times what they paid. They use intimidation, sabotage, whatever it takes to force people to sell." Harper felt a chill run down her spine. "Will they come back?" "Probably. Men like that do not take no for an answer." Vincent looked at her, his expression softening. "But do not worry. I have dealt with worse, and I am not going anywhere. This ranch is mine, and no one is going to take it from me." Harper wanted to believe him, but she could not shake the feeling that trouble was coming. She was right. Over the next few weeks, strange things started happening. Fences were cut, allowing cattle to wander onto neighboring properties. Water troughs were sabotaged, forcing the crew to spend precious time making repairs. A barn caught fire in the middle of the night, though they managed to put it out before much damage was done. None of it could be directly traced back to Saunders and his associates, but everyone knew who was responsible. Vincent hired extra men to patrol the property at night, and he made sure Harper stayed close to the main house after dark. He was worried, though he tried to hide it. This was exactly the kind of pressure that could break a smaller operation, forcing them to sell just to escape the constant harassment. But Vincent was not going to give up, no matter what they threw at him. One night in October, Harper woke to the sound of gunshots. She bolted upright, her heart pounding, and ran to the window. In the distance, she could see flames, another fire, this one bigger than the last. She dressed quickly and ran outside, following the orange glow toward the eastern pasture. The scene was chaos. Men were running back and forth with buckets of water trying to contain the blaze. Vincent was in the thick of it, his face streaked with soot, shouting orders. Harper joined the bucket line, passing water as fast as she could, her arms aching with the effort. It took hours, but they finally got the fire under control. By the time the sun rose, everyone was exhausted, and a full acre of grazing land was nothing but blackened earth. But no one had been hurt, and the fire had not spread to the cattle or any of the buildings. Vincent stood looking at the damage, his jaw clenched tight. Harper came to stand beside him, her dress filthy and her face smudged with ash. "This has to stop," she said quietly. "It will, one way or another." 2 days later, Saunders showed up again, this time with an even lower offer, claiming that the recent troubles had devalued the property. Vincent told him to go to hell and ordered him off the ranch at gunpoint. Saunders left, but not before making vague threats about what would happen if Vincent continued to be stubborn. That night, Vincent came to Harper's cabin and held her close, burying his face in her hair. "I am sorry you are caught up in this," he said. "This is not what you signed up for when you took the job as cook." "I am not going anywhere," Harper said firmly. "We will get through this together." "I love you," Vincent said suddenly, pulling back to look at her. "I know it is fast and maybe it is not the right time to say it, but I do. I love you, Harper Thompson. You are the strongest, bravest woman I have ever known, and I want to spend the rest of my life with you." Harper felt tears spring to her eyes. "I love you too, Vincent, more than I ever thought possible." He kissed her then, hard and desperate, and Harper kissed him back with everything she had. They were in the middle of a storm, but they had each other, and that was enough. The trouble continued for another 2 weeks, escalating to the point where Vincent contacted the territorial marshal's office in Tucson. The marshal sent a deputy to investigate, and between Vincent's testimony and evidence gathered from neighboring ranchers who had suffered similar harassment, they were able to build a case against Saunders and his associates. The men were arrested and charged with arson, vandalism, and attempted extortion. It turned out that Saunders had been operating this scheme across Arizona and New Mexico for years, forcing dozens of ranchers to sell at unfair prices. The trial was set for January, and Vincent would have to testify, but for now, at least, the immediate threat was over. With the crisis resolved, life on the ranch returned to normal. The crew repaired the damaged fences and water troughs, replanted the burned grazing land, and got back to the regular work of running a cattle operation. Harper continued cooking 3 meals a day, and Vincent continued working alongside his men, but now there was a new ease between them, a sense that they had weathered a storm together and come out stronger on the other side. One evening in November, as the air turned crisp and cool, Vincent asked Harper to take a walk with him. They strolled across the ranch, past the pastures where cattle grazed peacefully, past the bunkhouse where the crew was playing cards and laughing, past the barn where horses whinnied softly in their stalls. Finally, they climbed a small hill that overlooked the entire spread, 15,000 acres of Arizona desert stretching out in all directions. "This is my favorite spot," Vincent said, looking out over his land. "When I first bought this place, it was just 200 acres of scrub brush and stubborn dirt. But I could see what it could become if I was willing to work hard enough. So I worked. Every day from dawn until dark, building this ranch one piece at a time, and now look at it." Harper stood beside him, taking in the view. The setting sun painted the landscape in shades of gold and amber, and the air smelled of sage and dust and possibility. "It is beautiful," she said softly. "You built something amazing here, Vincent. You should be proud." "I am proud. But it feels incomplete somehow." He turned to look at her, his expression serious. "Do you know what is missing?" Harper shook her head. "You, as part of it, not just as the cook or as the woman I am courting, but as my wife, as my partner in every sense of the word." Harper's breath caught. "Vincent." He dropped to one knee right there on the hilltop, pulling a small box from his pocket. Inside was a simple gold band with a small diamond, nothing fancy but beautiful in its simplicity. "Harper Thompson, Will you marry me? Will you build a life with me here, on this land that we will own together? I know I am not perfect, and ranching is hard work with no guarantees, but I promise to love you and respect you and stand by your side no matter what comes our way. What do you say?" Harper looked down at him, this strong, capable man who was offering her not just his love but his partnership, his respect, his whole life. 6 months ago, she had been scraping by, barely surviving, wondering if she would ever find solid ground again. And now here she was, being offered everything she had ever wanted and more. "Yes," she said, her voice breaking with emotion. "Yes, I will marry you." Vincent stood up and swept her into his arms, spinning her around as they both laughed with pure joy. He slid the ring onto her finger, and it fit perfectly, as if it had been made just for her. They were married 3 weeks later in a small ceremony in Nogales, with the entire crew in attendance. Harper wore a simple white dress that she had sewn herself, and Vincent wore his best suit and a smile that would not quit. The town's minister performed the ceremony, and afterward, there was a celebration at the ranch with food, music, and dancing that lasted well into the night. As Harper danced with her new husband under the stars, she thought about how much her life had changed in such a short time. She had come here as a woman with nothing, desperate for work and a place to belong. And now she was married to a man she loved deeply, living on land that stretched as far as the eye could see, building a future that was brighter than anything she had dared to imagine. But even more than the land or the security or the comfortable life Vincent could provide, what mattered most was the way he looked at her, like she was the most precious thing in his world. That was the real gift, the real treasure. Not the 15,000 acres, but the love of a good man who saw her as an equal partner, who valued her strength and her dreams as much as his own. The first year of marriage brought its own challenges and adjustments. Harper moved from her small cabin into the main house, into Vincent's bedroom, which became their bedroom. She continued cooking for the crew, though Vincent hired a young woman from town to help with the cleaning and laundry, insisting that Harper should not have to do everything herself. Harper was grateful for the help, especially as the ranch continued to grow and thrive. Vincent was true to his word about treating her as a partner. He consulted her on major decisions, asked her opinion on which cattle to sell and which to keep for breeding, and listened when she suggested improvements to the ranch operations. Harper, in turn, used her organizational skills to streamline the kitchen operations and reduce food waste, saving the ranch money while still feeding the crew well. In the spring, Harper discovered she was pregnant. She told Vincent over breakfast one morning, and he reacted with such pure, unfiltered joy that she laughed and cried at the same time. He picked her up and spun her around, then immediately set her down and apologized, worried he had been too rough. "I am pregnant, not fragile," Harper said, still laughing. "You do not have to treat me like I am made of glass." But Vincent could not help being protective, especially as her belly grew and the baby's arrival drew closer. He insisted she cut back on her work hours, hired another helper for the kitchen, and made sure she rested every afternoon. Harper indulged him, understanding that this came from love and not from any belief that she was weak or incapable. Their son was born in December, right before Christmas, a healthy boy with his father's dark hair and his mother's determined chin. They named him William after Harper's father, and Vincent held him with such gentleness, and wondered that Harper fell in love with her husband all over again. Watching Vincent with their son, seeing the tenderness and patience he showed, Harper thought about how lucky she was. Not just because she had married a wealthy rancher, but because she had married a good man, a man who loved her completely and who would be a wonderful father to their children. As William grew from an infant into a toddler and then a bright, energetic little boy, Harper and Vincent's love continued to deepen. They had their disagreements, of course, the normal friction that came from two strong-willed people building a life together. But they always worked through it with honesty and respect, never going to bed angry, always remembering that they were on the same team. The ranch continued to prosper under their joint management. Vincent expanded the herd and bought additional land when neighboring properties came up for sale. Harper finally opened her restaurant in Nogales when William was 3. A small but elegant establishment that served the recipes her mother had taught her alongside dishes she had created herself. Vincent helped her renovate the building and hire staff, and the restaurant quickly became known as the best place to eat in southern Arizona. Harper split her time between the ranch and the restaurant, and while it was exhausting at times, she loved every minute of it. She had built something of her own, just as she had always dreamed, and she had done it with the support and encouragement of a husband who believed in her completely. When William was 5, Harper gave birth to their second child, a daughter they named Rose. She was the spitting image of Harper, with curly brown hair and bright, curious eyes. William adored his little sister, appointing himself her protector and playmate. Vincent joked that he was outnumbered now, 3-1, but Harper could see how much he loved being surrounded by his family. Life settled into a comfortable rhythm. Mornings at the ranch, helping Vincent with ranch business and teaching the children their letters and numbers. Afternoons at the restaurant, overseeing the kitchen and greeting customers. Evenings back at the ranch, eating dinner together as a family and reading to the children before bed. It was busy, sometimes chaotic, but it was good. So good. The years passed. William grew into a thoughtful, hardworking boy who loved helping his father with the ranch. Rose grew into a spirited, adventurous girl who loved helping her mother in the kitchen and experimenting with new recipes. They added 2 more children to the family, another son named James and a second daughter named Clara. The house was always full of noise and laughter and love. Vincent's hair started going gray at the temples, and Harper found reading glasses helped with her recipe books, but they aged together gracefully, still very much in love after 15 years of marriage. They still took evening walks up to the hilltop where Vincent had proposed, looking out over the land they had built their life on, talking about their dreams for the future and their gratitude for the present. Harper never forgot where she had come from, never took for granted the life she had built. She donated money to help women in situations like the one she had been in, women who needed a second chance and a helping hand. She hired women at her restaurant who were down on their luck, giving them fair wages and a safe place to work. She taught Rose and Clara that they could be anything they wanted to be, that they were not limited by their gender or anyone else's expectations. And Vincent, for his part, taught William and James to treat women with respect, to see them as equals, to value strength of character over any other quality. He ran the ranch with fairness and integrity, paying his workers well and treating them with dignity. He was known throughout the territory as a man of his word, someone who could be trusted and respected. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Harper and Vincent hosted a celebration at the ranch. The entire crew was there along with the restaurant staff, neighbors from surrounding ranches, friends from town, and their 4 children, who were now young adults themselves. There was food and music and dancing, just like at their wedding all those years ago. As Harper danced with Vincent under the same stars that had witnessed their first dance as husband and wife, she thought about the journey that had brought them here. From that first meeting when she had been desperate for work and he had been looking for a cook, to this moment, surrounded by family and friends, celebrating 2 decades of love and partnership. "What are you thinking about?" Vincent asked, pulling her closer. "How lucky I am. How grateful I am for everything we have built together." "I am the lucky one," Vincent said. "The luckiest man alive. You walked into my life when I did not even know something was missing, and you filled it with light and love and laughter. These have been the best 20 years of my life, Harper. And I cannot wait for the next 20 and the 20 after that." Harper kissed him, not caring that their children were watching or that the whole party could see. "I love you, Vincent Harlow, today, tomorrow, and forever." "I love you too, Harper Harlow. More than all the land we own, more than all the cattle we run, more than anything in this world or the next." They danced until the stars began to fade, and the eastern sky started to lighten with the promise of a new day. And as the sun rose over the 15,000 acres that stretched out before them, Harper thought about how perfectly her life had turned out. Not because it had been easy, but because she had found someone to share the journey with, someone who saw her as an equal partner, someone who loved her not in spite of her strength, but because of it. She had come to this ranch as a cook, not knowing that Vincent owned every acre they stood on, not knowing that he was one of the most successful ranchers in the territory. But even if she had known, it would not have changed anything. Because what mattered was not the land or the money or the success. What mattered was the man himself, the integrity and kindness and love that he brought to every aspect of his life. Together, they had built something that went beyond property lines and cattle herds and successful businesses. They had built a life filled with love and respect and partnership, a life that honored both of their strengths and supported both of their dreams. They had built a family, raised children who were kind and capable and strong. They had built a legacy that would last long after they were gone. As the party wound down and guests started heading home, Harper stood on the front porch of the ranch house, watching her children laugh together, watching Vincent shake hands with the crew and thank them for their years of loyal service. This was her life, this beautiful, chaotic, wonderful life. And she would not change a single moment of it. The children eventually grew up and started their own lives. William took over the day-to-day operations of the ranch, proving to be as capable and hardworking as his father. Rose expanded the restaurant, opening a second location in Tucson, and eventually writing a cookbook that became popular throughout the territory. James became a veterinarian, using his knowledge to help not just the family ranch but ranches throughout southern Arizona. Clara became a teacher, opening a school for girls that emphasized both traditional education and practical skills. Harper and Vincent watched their children's successes with pride, knowing they had raised them well, given them strong foundations to build their own lives on. As they moved into their later years, they scaled back their own work, trusting the younger generation to carry on what they had started. They spent their days together, working in the garden Harper had expanded over the years, taking long rides across the ranch land they both loved so much, sitting on the porch in the evening and watching the sunset paint the desert in impossible colors. They had built a good life, a full life, and now they were enjoying the fruits of all that hard work. On a warm spring evening when Harper was 62 and Vincent was 70, they climbed the hill where he had proposed all those years ago. The climb was harder now, their steps slower, but they made it to the top and stood looking out over the ranch that had been the foundation of their life together. "You remember the first day you came here?" Vincent asked, his arm around Harper's waist. "Of course. I was so desperate for work, so determined to prove I could do the job. I had no idea I was talking to the owner of one of the biggest ranches in Arizona." Vincent laughed. "And I had no idea I was hiring the woman who would become my wife, my partner, the love of my life. No regrets?" Harper asked, looking up at him. Not a single one. You, not one. This life, this beautiful life we built together, it is more than I ever dreamed possible." They stood there as the sun set, casting long shadows across the land, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and purple. And when the first stars began to appear, they walked back down the hill hand in hand, heading home together, just as they had done every day for the past 40 years. Their love story had started with a simple help-wanted ad, a desperate woman needing work and a rancher needing a cook. But it had grown into something extraordinary, something that touched the lives of everyone around them. It was a love built on respect and partnership, on shared dreams and mutual support. It was a love that had weathered storms and celebrated triumphs, that had created a family and built a legacy. And as they entered the ranch house that had been their home for so many years, Harper thought about how fitting it was that she had not known Vincent owned every acre they stood on when she first arrived. Because it had never been about the land or the wealth or the status. It had always been about the man himself, about the way he treated her with respect from the very first day, about the way he saw her as an equal partner, about the way he loved her completely and unconditionally. That was the real treasure she had found here, not in the 15,000 acres of Arizona desert, but in the heart of a good man who had chosen to share his life with her. And that was worth more than all the land in the world. Years continued to pass, and Harper and Vincent grew old together, surrounded by the love of their children, grandchildren, and eventually great-grandchildren. The ranch remained in the family, passed down through the generations, each one adding their own contributions while honoring the foundation that Vincent and Harper had built. When Vincent passed away peacefully in his sleep at the age of 85, Harper mourned the loss of her partner, her best friend, her great love. But she did not crumble under the weight of grief. She had learned long ago that life required strength and perseverance, and she honored Vincent's memory by continuing to live fully, surrounded by the family they had created together. Harper lived another 3 years after Vincent's death, long enough to see her youngest great-grandchild born, long enough to finish writing her memoirs, which her granddaughter would later publish. She passed away peacefully in the same bedroom she had shared with Vincent for more than 40 years, surrounded by her children, secure in the knowledge that she had lived a good life, a meaningful life, a life full of love. At her funeral, her children spoke about her strength and her kindness, her determination and her generosity. They spoke about the way she had overcome hardship to build something beautiful, the way she had loved their father completely while never losing herself. They spoke about the lessons she had taught them through her words and her actions, lessons about integrity and hard work, and the importance of treating all people with dignity and respect. And as they laid her to rest beside Vincent on the hilltop, where he had proposed all those years ago, the sun setting over the 15,000 acres that had been the canvas for their love story, it was clear that Harper and Vincent's legacy would live on. Not just in the land or the ranch or the successful businesses, but in the lives of the people they had touched, the values they had instilled in their children, and the example they had set of what true love and partnership could look like. Their story had started with Harper not knowing that Vincent owned every acre they stood on. But it had ended with both of them understanding that what they truly owned, what they had built together that could never be taken away, was infinitely more valuable than any piece of land. They owned a lifetime of memories, a family bound together by love, and a legacy of integrity and kindness that would be passed down through the generations. And that was the greatest treasure of all.